everybody should have a copy of it, but here it is again. So that's the motion without notice. And really the workshop today, as you'll see here, Councillor Herman, seconded by Councillor Tress-Gothick, it was resolved that the item be adjourned until it came to a workshop before the end of June. So that's what we're here today to discuss. And the way that we've approached it, is just put a short presentation together, a quick look at our current position on climate change, and I've also done a quick comparison of what other councils are doing in this space and what their policy positions are. So if we can have a quick look at that. I've drafted a letter for the Premier using the resolution, what was in the resolution as a basis. So I think it would be really useful in this workshop if we can visit that draft and consider what it looks like and whether that really reflects accurately, what council would like the letter to say to the Premier, the language that's used, and the position, the policy position or the council's position on that. So who the letter should be sent to, the Premier or Minister for Tourism, Honourable Emily Burke. And just to help inform that, I've got the letter that Mitcham Council sent, just for information purposes, and I've also got the responses. They were really helpful when I reached out to them. They sent me the responses that they got back, so I've just included the response from Zoe Beddison. And then at the end, if it's okay if we just quickly go through those and we can look at the letter. And I've actually got some hard copies here because I know it's hard to look at things on the screen, and maybe just get your feedback on if we were to send a letter, what it would look like, and if you're happy with the draft, if you've got any feedback on that. So
is the assumption there that we're going to approve that Councillor Grant's motion, is it?
No.
You made that assumption.
No, I think it's just that if the report goes to council, I think it would be useful to include a draft letter that addresses what was in the resolution, because it could help make a decision. If the letter was to go, it would look something like this. So that's the kind of reasoning behind putting together.
Are you also including another letter there supporting the continuation of it?
That Mitcham one sort of does quite.
Yes, I think if we move through to it, you'll see the draft, which is really very similar to the Mitcham letter, which reinforces support of events like Tour Down Under and what they do, but then also has a position about climate change. So this is Council's current position, and I think everyone's aware of it, but just to revisit Climate Emergency Declaration 2019, our most recent carbon management plan towards zero emissions from April 2025, and that built upon the corporate carbon management plan that was endorsed in 2019. And then we also have the Resilient Hills and Coast Regional Action Plan endorsed November 2024. A quick look at what other councils are doing. So I've only put a few in here, but I have looked at a couple of other councils as well. But basically just looked at these things: climate emergency declaration, emissions targets plans, their general kind of approach, and then their position on fossil fuel promotion. So really leading the pack is Mitcham. They have a ban on fossil fuel advertising and sponsorship, so they're leading the pack with being strong on climate change initiatives. Second of the ones I looked at was Onkaparinga, who, like us, have declared climate emergency, have good plans and targets and an approach to climate action. So their position on fossil fuel promotion is that they will avoid new fossil fuel advertising and sponsorship. So I think that's a fairly vague way of saying they will if they can.
Is
So
that for their events or is it the ABC?
that's for everything they do.
They do, but if there's an outside organisation comes in,
Yeah.
they don't interfere in that, like the
Uh,
TDU.
I believe, I mean, if we're looking at the Tour Down Under example, they've never had a stage of the Tour Down Under in their council before, so it doesn't, that's not something they have to consider. Whereas Onkaparinga has a strong, they, like us, been associated with Tour Down Under since the beginning, so, and they are committed to continuing with that, so I think they will avoid new fossil fuel advertising and sponsorship allows them to maintain any current relationships, including Tour Down Under. I wasn't able to find any other councils in South Australia who have a ban. I did look at Mount Barker. So they declared a climate emergency. They have a climate change action plan from November 2019, and they're also part of the Cities Power Partnership, and they have an energy and emissions reduction plan. So that's just a quick sort of overview for you. I've got a little bit of other research, but I think it just kind of give you some background.
Did you have a look at Barossa? Because they've been, I think, all with TDUs since its inception.
Yeah, I haven't, but I certainly can for the report. Any council, I did use AI to search any council that, and there were quite a few in there, but Barossa wasn't, so it didn't come up as one that has, and I mean, they have a strong association with Tour Down Under as well, so I think, it precludes you from doing that, as we're all aware, so that's just a bit of a comparison at the moment. So the draft letter isn't in there. So sorry, the draft letter isn't there, so I'm going to just pass this around to everybody. So if you wouldn't mind passing that around. So I've included just I've included the, might need a few more. We've got enough. Has everybody got?
Yes. Yep.
Are we reading the motion or the letter?
I just put the motion on one side just to help for reference, but the letter is this one. So I just I've just colour coded it because just to make it easy for you to use different, to read the different paragraphs. And what I will do is just go back to the motion. I'm sorry, it's fairly small, which is why I put it on the back here. So each paragraph.
Sorry to interrupt. And thanks for doing this. And it's probably a pretty vague gig you've been given here. Can I just ask the people that put this motion and supported it, what they wanted us to resolve in this workshop? Like, I've never been in a workshop to write a letter before. Is this what you're hoping to get, Jen, to draft something that might be your liking, or what? Like, what are we going to get out of this?
I think on the day, from memory, it was going to be voted out, whereas this gave us an opportunity, because it was a motion on notice, so it was going to be voted out. So this gave an opportunity for us to actually give it time to work through and give people more time to think it through, so that we could actually.
Okay, but you don't know what the vote would have been. You put motion as the first. So you thought it would have failed, and you wanted, but what did you want to do? Rework the letter?
Yeah, I think for me, I felt that just picking, I don't have any lines to any the fuel, the mining, but just to pick on Santos, to me, I feel like if we're going to have a position, it should be on all fossil fuels. It shouldn't just be one company, because there's multiple fossil fuel companies out there. And in this scenario, yes, Santos is sponsoring TDU, but if you have a motion that just goes for Santos and then another fossil fuel company comes in, what do we do then? Then do we have another?
But the first motion that preceded this was general fossil fuel companies, which you voted down. That wasn't naming any fossil fuel company. It was simply saying not any fossil fuel company. So I don't understand.
I would like to see us, for me personally, a position that is takes into all fossil fuel. And I also felt that, this is my personal opinion, so I can't speak for other councillors, that having a motion which didn't have any regard for current agreements councils got with state government, I wanted to understand better rather than just voting on the night, on the run, because I think upsetting state government short term might feel good, but long term doesn't buy city friends, and I think we need to be more strategic than that. My position overall is 100%. I think we should be pulling away from fossil fuel, but we also need to be careful of things that we've already agreed to. From what I understand, council had signed previously, 12 months prior, a 5-year agreement with TDU, with Santos as the main sponsor. So to then backflip is not a good look. That's my opinion. I know
Well,
this.
And I just remind elected members that it's not a debating forum. Yeah, it's really passing comments and asking questions. Go ahead. It does, Malcolm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I seconded the motion. I wasn't sure that we'd had time to consider all the ramifications. The idea was to have 3 months to get some more advice from the council staff. Then we'll be in a very clear position to make a decision when it came back to council. So I'm not implying that it would have been voted down. I'm not saying it would have been carried, but I think we've had time to have a good, close look at it now, and the decision that will be coming will be made on the evidence, as we should make all decisions.
Yeah. So just for tonight, do you see Janice going down the right track, and that is trying to draft something?
If that resolution was carried, I think it looks all right. Okay. If that motion was carried.
Sorry, thanks, Jim.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, I think, I think I've approached it from the position of drafting a letter that tries to encompass what was in the resolution, so that can form a part of the report that goes to council for a decision. So I know that the next step will be to go back to council. So hopefully this time, the short time that we have, will give it a little bit of guidance as to what our council feels about the information that I need to provide in that report that will help make a decision. So that's why I just sort of started with drafting a letter that would really be the mechanics of how we would go forward if it was passed or not. So I think just to help inform, so this is the draft, and what it was based on, and I think what the resolution was based on was the City of Mitcham letter. So they sent that to the Premier, who forwarded it to the Honourable Sally Bettison, who at the time was the Tourism Minister. And then they also sent one to Lucy Hood, who was the Climate, Environment, Water Minister, and she deferred to Minister Bettison, and the Premier responded, and then Zoe Bettison responded, and
What was the response?
and
Did you see the responses?
yes, so this is the response. So this is the City of Mitcham letter, which is very similar to the one that I've drafted here, but I just sort of related it to our council. So I've included the paragraph in red. I just included because that speaks to us declaring a climate emergency. So then this is the acknowledgement that came from Zoe Bettison. So she talks about the event, She talks about Tour Down Under and what it does, and the importance of sponsorship, and basically thanks City of Mitcham for their support and their feedback, and says that it will be fed through to the Tourism Commission. That the partnership with Santos was extended to 2028, so that's the current position. So there's a couple more years to go on that. So that formed the basis of the draft letter that I put together here. So yeah, I was hoping, unless there's something else that council would like, other information that they'd like to provide me with, that they'd like to be considered in the report when it goes to council. I just started with this as a draft letter. I think some of the things that I think would be valuable in drafting something that might be included as an appendix in the report would be just looking at whether you feel that the language is the kind of language that, whether it should be more encompassing or of all fossil fuels, or this letter is specifically talking about Santos as a sponsor of Tour Down Under. So,
Lee.
This is a rhetorical question, so I'm expecting not necessarily an answer. The question is there any evidence that this council take a position similar to what's in this motion, sending a letter like this would actually change the state government's mind on Santos sponsorship at all? Because I haven't seen evidence of that.
Point of
When we had
principle,
Santos, when we had Petit here, yeah, there was no evidence of that.
I would agree if we could find another sponsor to replace Santos.
They didn't say that. I sort of said that, Santos is a good South Australian company.
Probably rather. Adrian's got his hand up, and then I'll go to Malcolm and then Kiralee.
As is real flags from my council, I think we sent plenty of letters that we know won't actually change anything. We still do it.
Yeah.
Doing lots of them.
Thank you. Malcolm, then Kiralee.
In the letter, are we able to demonstrate what we've actually done to reduce emissions and things like that? We've got some initiatives that might point to the government and say, well, look, Adelaide Hills Council is actually doing something.
Yeah. I personally think that's a really good point, in the sense that we demonstrate how we're playing our role. And yes, Leith, you're right, it won't necessarily change their minds, but I don't think that means we should advocate for what we think in the long term is right. And it might mean that in 5 years' time, or 3 years' time, whenever they're reconsidering it, that at least they understand that we as a council have that. But I think telling the story of what we do as a council to be sustainable for our community, particularly noting the adverse effects of increasing temperatures through our region, I think that's an important point to make.
Oh, thank you, Kiralee.
Yeah, just really briefly, I think you're definitely on the right track with this letter. Our recall includes lots of important information. I'm just wondering whether you mind flipping back to the very first motion that Chris moved, the short one. Yes, that. Can I just read that for a moment?
There is history of Tennis Australia used to be sponsored by Santos, so there is a history of moving away from fossil fuel sponsorship. So they did that after the bushfires, the 2019 bushfires, and the adverse impacts on players in the tournament. So they made that decision to move away. And I had meant to look at who the current sponsor is, but I don't know who it is. But they did move away, and it hasn't had any adverse impacts on their event. So they've been able to find another sponsor.
Is there more to this?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then that is the bit that I've copied on here as well.
Okay, yeah.
It's the same.
Thank you, Kiralee. I'll go to Chris and then back to Rick.
Thank everyone for their contribution. Those last couple of thoughts, I think boasting about what we've done for carbon reduction is good, because it's all very well to be critical, but everyone's got to act, of course. I think it's worth talking about the impact of climate change on us, and the Black Summer bushfires are especially one of them. But
The first paragraph of this motion says a lot of that.
yeah, but we can mention the effect of the Cutlery Creek fire and the Sanderson Flat fire, in particular about other fires, Mount Pole. But yeah, you don't go to town, but it's worth mentioning we're feeling the impacts. And I don't know, you might consider saying, yeah, and we'll support the tour down under in these respects, because we have, and it's you know, we have at so many stages. But again, you use your own judgment on whether it becomes a thesis or not.
I know we had Rick and then Adrian, so I was just looking at the time. We weren't really over time, but go ahead. Yep.
So my view is I don't understand why we're doing this at all. I see it as a complete waste of council's time. And when you have a statement that says that climate science warns that January temperatures will continue rising, and if it doesn't, as most of their other predictions haven't happened, but we're saying it will happen and it doesn't. And I just find this, we're just right out of our own lane. This isn't nothing to do with local government, nothing to do with the council. I'm all about sustainability and all the rest of it, the work we're doing in Cox Creek, etc. Fantastic idea. Plant some trees. If you go over my end of town, you see the amount of land care work that's happened and revegetation, etc. Making the use of carbon and actually physically doing something with it, that's what we should be doing. But I just don't see what we're trying to achieve by saying we're not going to allow coal, oil or gas sponsorship. We don't survive without coal, oil and gas. We do not live. I mean, if we go down this path, I'm quite happy to adapt the budget to suit, because it's going to save us a lot of money. Because we won't need to do roads, we won't do infrastructure, we won't do anything accordingly. Let's talk sustainability about what we're doing, all for it. But anything else beyond that, I just think we are right out of our lane. This is state and federal government, and with the way that they are actually acting themselves in regards to environment, what the hell do we think we're going to do here? Say, we don't want sponsorship in the Lone Hills Council of coal, oil and gas. Last week, we sat here in this room listening to Rob Gregory tell us that they're going to burn methane, and the council was all happy about that. Into carbon dioxide.
Realise that is a reduction.
They're going to burn methane, flaring methane, to turn it into carbon dioxide, and you all went, yeah, good. Good. If carbon dioxide does not disappear in the atmosphere unless it's taken up by trees and grass, and methane lasts only up to 10 years, and yet you want to turn it into carbon dioxide.
Okay.
Just dumb.
As I said, it's not a debate. Everyone's got and clearly passionate on this topic, and everyone has their views. But it's not about debating. It's really providing us feedback to furnish the best report, back to council to make a decision on. So, yeah, point taken, and we'll consider that. Now, Leith. Now, Nathan, did you? No, you're right. Leith, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to respond. Well, I mean, to me, there's nothing wrong with saying it will increase, because it's not just I'm not debating this because it's a scientific fact that the temperatures have been increasing and will continue to increase. And the other one about the burning of the methane is that methane is 20 times more potent as a greenhouse gas
Last 10
than
years.
dioxide, and that's why you want to burn it, because you don't want to put something which is 20 times more potent into the atmosphere. So yeah.
Thank you, Leith. Adrian.
If we do get that project later, just get your draft. I think the green one is it sort of sits in the spirit of your original motion. It's sort of quite to the point Santos Road do this. Should we go somewhere with this? It's not just about Santos only. I can consider things like the Adelaide rallies and sponsorships associated there. So if we go down this path, I think that green bit's a bit just a city where I guess it's secure.
Make it broader.
Yeah, look, I would say from a comms point of view, I think that it's fairly strong, you know, that finding it ironic, it's potentially not.
It's a bit sarcastic.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of yeah, I wouldn't write it like that, but I really stuck to what was in the resolution, except for that bit in red. I've kind of written it word for word with what the resolution was, and that's the kind of feedback that I think, you know, if a report goes to council and it has a draft letter, it could have, you know, we could modify the language a little bit if people think that that's a good idea. Or should we include a draft that sticks with what is in the motion? I think that's really a council decision. As Greg said, it's good to get some feedback from this group to help inform what that report looks like.
That was always that, just what that was seeing now. I guess then on the other area, you know, this is we in my mind, we often put statements about our position and where we are as a council in our things like our strategic plan as well. You know, we do from time to time, I feel, have motions that are taking a certain, or almost a more specific position, which is often an expansion of something that's sitting in our strategic plan. I guess that's where I see this one going.
So you mean like a pointer to something that's in a strategic plan?
Yeah, well, I think that's how often these appear, and I guess, you know, we did have, I think it was made by unanimous resolution in 2019 from a climate emergency perspective. So I feel like in terms of, I guess speaking to what you were saying, Lee, it doesn't not align with our current adopted strategic plan and an advocacy role that we play, and I acknowledge obviously we should vote on that strategic plan, but it doesn't, in my mind, misalign with one of our roles that we can play. So I guess I'm not against where we're heading in that direction from that. Yeah, that was about it. Yeah, sorry.
Good.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Chris, then George. You're right. Sorry, Georgia, and then Alex.
I quite like it. I think that it's punchy. That it's something that writing in a letter might actually get it more noticed than just what everyone else would say, being kind of chill and nice about it. I think some diversification with including others, not just being TU, as well, just to be a little bit more broad. But this letter sent to the Premier, would we release that for all the public to see what we've said? Because I think that's where the effect.
Richard's letter is.
It's an open letter. An open letter.
Yeah, because I think that has a lot of effect, whether it has effect on decision makers or not. At least it shows up what we're doing and evaluating publicly.
Thank you, Georgia. Alex?
I just want to make a comment, and this is a bit for Rick. I think this is more of a position for council, so we've got something that when things do pop up in the region, we say we are pushing back on mining fossil fuels, because although I agree we need parts of it for the future, when I was going at Kutsutonis with the gold mine, the company that wanted to put the gold mine in Nibabraki had no regard for any of the farmers, had no regard for the water system, for the underground water. They didn't believe they needed water licenses, and they then were taking all the farmers around them to court because they were holding them up. And it was only because, you know, regional bodies and council that stepped in to help fight, and it's about having a position. I fully agree. I'm a winemaker, I'm still going to need pumps that have got rubber in them and stuff like that, but I think you still got to have some position because, you know, and that's why I think just Santos is too specific. I think it needs to be a bit broader, because I think you see what's happening potentially down in the southeast, where they allow fracking and they can just go straight into farmers' properties. We don't want that either, and I think so. This is not 100% on the same topic, but it's in the same area where I think it's important for us to have a position saying, you know, we are concerned about mining and fossil fuels, and you know there needs to be more attention put on it, and we're not comfortable with kind of just greenwashing where people go, we're going to do this and we'll just give you something out inside. So I think for me that's how I see it. You know, mining, you know, rare earths, if you're going to move to renewables, there's still stuff that's required to under the ground. So, but I think it's important for us to have a position saying that if we want to be questioning mining and we're not open to greenwashing for people just to pay their way through and say, don't look here, and we'll just sponsor big fancy events and we'll move on. So I think it's important, in summary, I think it's important for us to have a position that we are not comfortable with you know, just unlimited mining. Yeah.
I'm very comfortable
Right.
with it because I think
Thank-
we're barking up the wrong tree.
All right, everyone's entitled to their view, and thank you for being very respectful. I will now call it. Is that okay? I think we've got enough.
Absolutely.
And we will take a few minute break and then reconvene. Just a bit, we're going to change, we're going to, unfortunately, I know you all came for this item, but we're going to push out the election policies, if that's okay, to another night. Because we do need to talk about the budget, and we have got someone waiting to talk about the.
Are you going to move it to another night, to the end?
To another night, if that's okay, or if we've got if you've got an appetite, we can do it at the end if you like.
Malcolm has an appetite to a point.
Okay.
Can I just ask, Greg, just to clarify what election policies is actually about?
So the caretaker policy,
Yeah.
Oh, right.
election signs
So when things
policy,
get into
Yes.
caretaker.
and the meeting schedule during
Right.
the caretaker
So
period.
we've got a little bit of time to do that, but we're hoping to do it before Zoe's departure. But
Because there'd be history to what's happened in the past, isn't there?
Sorry.
There'd be history to what's happened previously, so
Yeah.
like time-wise, it might not take long.
I don't think it will take that long. Yeah.
Let's see if we can get through the other stuff.
so here we go. Yeah. Thank you. We'll take a 2-minute break if that's okay.
Are we getting a cup of tea?
Yeah. No, we've got time for a cup of tea. Yes.
Greg, are we going to Ashton first? Are you doing Ashton first?
Jay, do you want to do Ashton first? Because
Yeah, probably
change it.
deserves
Yes.
a
Makes
bit
sense.
of fresh before we
And also
get too
because it's
tired.
sitting here.
And
It's a
yeah,
helps transition.
exactly. Yeah,
Is it good news week?
it is.
Oh, fantastic. I'll start.
No fat lady singing.
Until we get to Ashton.
Jay, can we speak Ashton?
Yeah,
I feel like he knows. I feel like it's just beneficial.
Yeah, totally.
Totes.
Do you want?
I'm hot, then I'm cold, then I'm hot, then I'm cold.
I thought that was me.
Every time you're it's you.
Yeah,
It's everything.
I go to my tea.
Voting is usually 50% of the room that get it, 50% that don't. I always want Nathan to.
I didn't get it.
You the one say you weren't going to have one of those?
They're good, aren't they?
Mine's one wall. What does it mean?
I had mine.
Walls all looking at the wrong image.
Sweat down that well. It's gone.
It's the positioning of it.
Top one now.
Yeah.
Why is that funny?
Google
Oh, okay.
And the fact that it's next to a floppy go as well.
You're such a child.
So when you go like parent marks, there's like pineapple, you know, that's what it's going. Hey, good conversation.
That was hilarious. It was
He was so innocent, he didn't know.
Stop it, don't concentrate.
This will take 2 minutes, yeah?
Anyone joining me at the SBA in the morning?
Yeah,
That's Wednesday morning.
Sorry?
Wednesday.
no, it's tomorrow.
Why is it?
Oh, lucky I said something. 7:30?
I mean, I would have got a reminder. Yeah, just do. Yeah, I'll be there.
Is it the pub?
Yeah.
So I got from my idea.
No. So I'll leave this to go.
That's all the time.
Up near the front.
SBA, isn't it?
I like trying to pick and choose my priorities.
I'm gonna flick the cookie crumbs to under Greg's desk. Look, Fraser,
Rogues Gallery.
I want you to look at this. Look at the young man. Look what happened.
There's your dad.
Malcolm, on the other hand, identical. He's not here.
Kirilei's there too.
He's there. He's not here.
That's it, is that?
Yeah.
I just love staring at this woman lifting the
There's your dad.
skirt pantsuit with the absolute sharpest shoulder pads.
They are sharp shouldered, but I feel like the hair is not as big as it should be.
We're gonna
I'm
go
not even
next.
looking
Yeah.
at it, all I see is the blue suit.
And we've got 2 more agenda items after that. So.
That should be our next.
To go.
Which one?
Yeah, I just looked at that when I first saw it.
As
long as there's money. As long as there's money price in it.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, you said
Looks like your age, maybe.
We're being ambitious, but
We're being.
Yeah, we're big ambitious.
Should we do an AIDS thing?
to tell you how I like to look.
okay. Bruce, do you want to? Is that all right if you round up? Is anyone in there?
It's not great.
Just getting grayer and grayer.
Like the skin and everything, and just you can see in their eyes that they've lost some of their soul left.
Okay, we might as well begin. We've just changed the order of items. We have got a guest here to talk about Ashton, so if that's okay, we'll get on with the Ashton discussion, and then we'll go back to the budget, and then if time permits, we'll look at the election policies. Yeah. This is confidential, so we will be going into confidence. So if that's okay, we'll bump out anyone that's online, but we'll re-invite you in about So the purpose is, really to discuss our financial sustainability as a council and the implications of the rate rise. And last time, you'd recall, we had a number of scenarios that we put forward, and all of them did some work. Some of them did more work, others did less work, but we always ended up with a deficit position, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then also finally gauge with elected members around the rate rise, because as you'd appreciate, we have got some extraordinary economic drivers at the moment. There's some hardship that people are indicating around cost of living, and we've got to be very mindful of that moving in, and once we cast this budget once and for all, even when we do go out as a draft, we need to make sure that it's the best that it can be in consultation. But of course, depending on the feedback we get through the consultation process, it's not cast in, it's not set in concrete. We can make some changes, but we want to make sure that we put our best foot forward.
Try that now.
Thank you. We'll run over the did you right?
I didn't update the slide, apologies.
It's okay. Survey results. Right, we did. Do you recall what we had there? Yeah,
So the survey results are there from the two surveys.
Yeah.
And then if I want to just click on one more slide. That is the current proposed budget at a 3% rate rise, and the impacts, or the various impacts that generates. The deficit and the net lending position, the net lending impact, and then your forecast closing debt. I guess what's quite worth mentioning is if you look at the projects, and I might just stand up because I struggle sitting back. If you look at the projects, we took feedback from the elected member body, and we brought back the school safety zone. Done, if you potentially recall, before that wasn't included. We also decreased the amount of our, where are we now?
Footpaths.
Footpaths, yes. Right, thank you. 500,000, and we replaced that with the Stirling East school precinct. So we've got the three precincts, the school precincts, and then the footpaths, we're taking into account elected feedback around linking them potentially to the school safety zones and making them really about accessibility rather than just a footpath down past a piece of someone's house.
So it is absolutely, just to reiterate, any footpath we'll be building is to do with accessibility and safety in relation to school zones. So that's a clear message. Some of the operating projects, and of course the same capital projects apart from that change. And then some of the operating projects are the same. So as we talked about in previous sessions, the strategic asset planning and community land management work needs to be done. That's a foundational document. Same with our town and precinct planning. I know that there's been criticisms around plans, but these are defining plans that will help us articulate clearly what the future will look like in those townships, around our assets, how we manage our assets, how we rationalise our assets, and what we'll be putting in our long-term financial plan, and what type of rate rises we'll be putting in our long-term financial plan. Without these critical documents, which will take a number of years, it will take a couple of years at least, where there's lots of assumptions. These will fine-tune those assumptions, and we'll actually get more accurate figures moving forward.
So the 3% rate rise is on top of CPI?
Absolutely, at this stage. So we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment.
Just comment on the strategic planning spend. I think if we don't do that, we're wasting money because we're making decisions without a plan.
Yeah.
I think it's actually good governance.
And the beauty of having these plans is, and you're well aware of it, is that we can help manage the expectations of our community. So if we do get very vocal community groups that come to us, we can say that this is a multi-criteria analysis that we've undertaken. these are our community hubs or our economic zones or whatever we define them in the future. And therefore, we're not saying absolutely no to some community groups or residents, or on some occasions we might have to. But what we're saying is that they're not high priorities. The more high priority projects and spend in our budgets would be done in the more near years, and some of the other ones will push out in our long-term financial plan and manage expectations that way.
Just a question on that footpath stuff we were talking about, so focusing on safety and accessibility. Are we going to do some work on some sort of a policy or a document that is a public document that we can then point to for exactly that reason, so that we can then say when someone comes to us and said, I want a footpath down my street, and you say, well, council, I'll come back to council staff and say, footpath down the street, is it possible? And you come back and say, no, it doesn't fit our criteria. Here's the criteria. So we can just say to them, not just, no, speak to the hand. We can say to them, here's the document, this is our criteria. We're a very well criteria. We can't put a footpath down every street. We have a footpath program where we're prioritising stuff, and this is the criteria to make sure that it's fair.
That's where we want to be.
Yeah.
That's exactly where we want to be, because that's the best way to manage those expectations, and also because we've got a finite budget, and we've got constraints around upping the council rates in future years. So it's critical work, and it's something that has to be done. Rightly so. You know, we've been in this chamber, and in the short period that I've been here, it's been a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. You know, we had a young child that came in, gave a deputation. We built a footpath. You know, we budgeted for it, and that's a little bit ad hoc. That's not planned in the way that we're talking about planning the works.
Hi, I've just got a quick question with one of the items here. It's the business development, salvage and save shop Heathfield. I don't know if you know, but vintage and second-hand and retro and is all top of the rage at the moment. Have we included the money that we might get from selling things in the save shop? Like it's only a very small amount of 60 grand if they want there for a whole year to establish that. Would we be able to pay that back with the income that would be earned?
Could be, but
it's simply a case of deferring it from this year. I think it's going to come onto the agenda each year, and until we're in a financially better position. I 1,000% agree with you. We should be able to have some income from it that goes back. It's just a case of timing at this point in time. It's just one of those projects that we could not do this year, do another year, and keep.
Can we have a look at what the Sterling Community Op Shop makes and kind of estimate?
Yeah, the first premise we developed the business case was around electronic waste and e-waste with a current user group that's operating underneath the Bridgewater Hall and facilitating that. So we'd want to make sure that we're tackling the part of the market that's not well established yet in reusing goods, and then expand thereafter, seeing how well it went. So it's not that we don't believe it's a very, very important initiative. I just think it's one of those ones that could be deferred.
Thank you.
Malcolm.
Just accessibility enabling footpaths. Does that include trying to get the one sealed footpath in urban areas? Because just the rough gravel is not always accessible. So how are you defining accessibility?
And I guess one thing that this council sort of has, but not totally, is what type of footpaths and treatments. You know, a gravel footpath could be perfect in a certain situation, but you wouldn't put it in front of a shopping centre or an aged care facility, or you might. You've got to look at the criteria, the topography of the land. So that's that criteria analysis that we'd undertake. And we might, as a council, decide that we'll have three types of footpaths, you know, a gravel footpath, a paved footpath, and a bitumen footpath, or a concrete footpath and a bitumen path. We haven't done that. That's that service standard discussion around what type of footpath are we going to build in what areas, and what our budget allows us to build as well, and in what time. So a footpath program generally in other councils is a 20-year program. It's not a 2-year program. We don't. Yeah, not a mature one. And that's what we'll be working on.
Yeah, can I just on the footpath thing, because it's come up a couple of times, and I don't want to drag it out, but in the past we've had presentations, I think it was Mr. Collins, show a map of a township where there's a sort of a heat map and saying, this is where footpaths would go based on these metrics. Now, I mean, it looked great. I don't know what the metrics were, so I wasn't equipped to do exactly what Leith would like to do, and I would too, is to say, look, sorry, you won't get a footpath there because there's one on the other side of the road and it's in good condition, or it gets this amount of foot traffic, that doesn't meet the criteria. I've never seen the criteria, but we were presented with what was said to be a footpath program with all the heat map sort of priority areas. So I don't know if that was.
Yeah, there is an adopted footpath plan in 2014. It's about that thick on A3 paper.
Yeah.
And that set out 5 high priority, medium, well 5 anyway, and very low, medium, high, and high. Now it's never been revoked.
So yeah, why do you need another one?
That's right. So if we went back to that 2014 plan, there would be a lot of footpaths that would be sealed.
It's also in the 2021 asset management plan for the roads, footpaths and curbs. So I'm just looking through that now, and there is some.
So it's really how do we identify it? How are they identified? Is it come down to, as we've done with Amy Gillett, there's smarts in Amy Gillett to measure the amount of use and traffic that we get down Amy Gillett. That informs the maintenance programs, or that informs the hierarchy of use. So it's really getting some smarts and getting some data on how these footpaths are used. And yes, of course, we'll revisit these plans and make sure if they're relevant, and if we need to get additional data around that criteria analysis, we'll do so. And that, therefore, the whole objective here is managing those expectations rather than getting random requests.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, just a couple of other questions while we're on this slide. How will we manage, the Premier made some promises up here about sports grounds and all sorts of things. He's not going to pay for all of it, is he? He's going to come to us for some money. So is there any sort of provisioning at all that we need to make? He comes back and, where was the one? Bridgewater?
That's what the place-based skate park is, the 250k.
Sorry, I missed it. Where is it?
Just right at the bottom of the total new capex, I've got place-based skate
It's
park.
over 250.
So that's not there.
It's not there. So we're basically saying we're not going to match the 250 that the state government.
So when he comes knocking at the door.
If he does, look, we haven't been officially.
But yeah.
To take the glory and take our money. And also, someone else can ask a question. There's something else I need to ask.
Station Road at Woodside, did we put in for a grant of 200,000 for that? So that would be, if we got that, that makes it 675, 475. Okay, there's some savings.
Do the salvage shop.
And,
That's to spend on the site.
That's what I was saying. Was count that as money in the bank and do some.
and so the Woolen Mill one, the collection operating costs, don't we pay for that shed now? With all that stored plus the lots?
Yeah.
So does that putting a line through that cost, or?
No, that was to
build a new shed.
Oh, that was the other one, wasn't it? That's 200,000.
Yeah.
Labourthorpe was on top of that.
Yeah.
That's the line through the collection operating costs.
That's talking
It's the OMI collection operating costs.
Yeah.
That's the
museum.
Woolen Mills.
heritage listed stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
We're talking about it tomorrow.
we are. Yeah, so we did strike that off, but there is a report coming to council because the group have come back to us that they've been offered a grant and it's for consideration. So it might come back on the list once we consider that report next week. It's been 11th hour that they've just approached Jess and her team around getting a grant to manage that.
Getting a grant, or have they got one? Sorry.
No, we'd have to apply for it. They haven't got it yet. Yeah,
Oh.
we have to apply.
There's also, if you've been reading the propaganda coming out of Canberra that they're going to pay next year's financial assistance grant a huge amount of money on the 28th of June. That will affect the current year's outcome. So it will add possibly to a deficit the following year, unless they bring the year ahead back again. So we just need to consider that. Overall, in the long term, it doesn't make any difference to the financial plan.
So we currently have that provision on that basis. So we've got I'm going to say it's $1 million, whatever, still to come in this year.
Yeah.
Because it's an untied grant, we recognise it when it's received.
Yeah.
So that supports what we've got currently in the budget and in VR3. When we get to this sort of time next year, then we have the same conversation.
I can't understand why they do that. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on.
The other point, Greg, that I made, I'll shut up there. The next point I made, that we've had the deputation, you don't believe me, do you, Lee?
Well, the shut up bit.
The people that's got off their backsides and came here and made presentations, right? They come in and had a talk. I don't think any of those are in these papers.
They're not. No,
Right.
none of those.
So can we please notate the draft budget to some notation there that we, this is the draft budget and we've been unable at this stage, something weasel words to say we're unable to fund these following projects, even though they're worthwhile and all that sort of thing. Is that?
That's a
can you
plan.
do that?
And
I mean, there's the cricket, the Woodside ground.
Letter of notification. A letter of acknowledgement.
Yeah, I'd still like to see it in the public documents.
And what we were looking at, picking up on Jade's point, we're not cutting it out altogether. It might be deferred, or it might need further consideration or discussion or some advocacy. What we need to say is what is our role moving forward? Is it something that we'll be looking at putting in the long-term financial plan, or is it more of an advocacy piece or a collaboration piece? And I guess that's how we manage it. Once again, the expectations of those groups as
Like
well.
to see it in the public document.
Sure.
Can I just
I
ask?
will shut up.
Sorry, the difference between 1 and 2 is option 1 3% above CPI and option 2 3% above CPI.
Sorry, option 1 is 1.5% above CPI.
1.5%.
Option 2 is 3% above CPI, and the first column is our LTIP that we've currently got adopted.
So if we could talk a little bit about that in our long-term financial plan, we've talked about a 1.5% increase above CPI. I want to draw elected members' attention back to that because that long-term financial plan is current. But what that means, and it's worth highlighting, our deficit, the majority of our deficit is made up of the depreciation. We can't hide from that. It is what it is. And so our deficit position is a lot higher than we first anticipated in that long-term financial plan, predicated on 1.5%. And what I wanted to gauge with elected members is that, do we stay true to that and go up with a 1.5% increase above CPI, but accept a higher deficit because of some of the things that we're not completely in control of. We will be in the future. We'll have better visibility of it in the future, but we need to do some of that foundational work that I talked about earlier around our asset strategy, rationalisation and all the rest of it. But this year and probably next year, that deficit is not going to be, it's going to be a lot higher than what was assumed in our long-term financial plan. And I just wanted to gauge the appetite from elected members that is that something that you would accept because it's a little bit outside of our control. Depreciation has hit us, got us from left field around a whole lot of factors around how depreciation's been treated now and in the past. And therefore, do we go out to the community and say we're sticking to the long-term financial plan, 1.5% above CPI, but we are going to unfortunately have a higher deficit? That plan, the old plan, was around repairing the budget, making some improvements in the budget incrementally. But if we do want a budget repair strategy, absolutely we would be looking at upping the rates in consecutive years or starting from this year. And that's really what I wanted to gauge with elected members, that when do we start that repair? Do we start this year or next year, or do we wait until we get these strategic documents underway and get some recommendations out of those strategic documents, and then look at adjusting that rate increase in future years rather than this year, in particular with all the economic drivers and issues that we have this year. So I wanted to gauge the elected members' view on that, and that's why we've put those options up for consideration. Georgia and then Alex. Alex, sorry.
Just a quick one, it's more from clarity. Employee costs obviously went up close to $1 million. Is that EBA negotiation?
Absolutely, yep. And luckily we've got, it is a bit, but luckily we have a 5% ceiling on that agreement. So anything beyond that, it's capped at 5%. Where in the past, it was free. There was no ceiling or floor in our agreements. And a few years back, it went up to 8% and beyond. So that employee cost is a real issue, but we've accounted for it.
It's almost as equally as bad as obviously depreciation and putting a lot of pressure on the budget. So
Yes.
I think it's worth calling out.
Yep.
Yeah, as far as being a bit out of our control.
And when you said there was a surprise in how much the depreciation cost was misunderstood as, what's the difference between what you thought it was and what it is now?
1.7 million? Yeah, 1.7 million difference.
At the time we passed the LTFP, we expected the depreciation charge to be 13.1. Currently budgeting it 14.8.
So that's purely just in the numbers didn't add up and was 1.7.
Yeah, do you want to talk about some of the factors? Yeah.
There's a whole range of factors that drive that. We've reassessed useful lives of some of our assets. That's decrease your useful life, you increase your depreciation charge. They were likely inappropriately too long potentially in the past, and so we reconsider those as that impact.
Unit rate application.
That would probably be one part of it. The other part of it is around CPI in depreciation. So some of our asset base last year went up by far more than we had previously expected. That in turn results in an increase in your depreciation charge, because the number that you're dividing through your useful life by has obviously inflated massively. I think we were originally budgeting a $5 million write-up, and we got $28 million write-up, something of that order of magnitude, which then in turn puts upward pressure on depreciation charge.
So when you say there are things out of our control, is that one of them, or was that a stuffer?
No, that's one of them.
Value of land and assets, everything's just gone crazy.
So it's not like we're going to have to go back to rate base and go, oh, we made a mistake. It was 1.7 wrong, now you're paying for it.
No.
No, it's the treatments as there's been a lot of work done in making sure that those asset management plans are more accurate, because that'll put us in a more sustainable position in the future. What I'm approaching with elected members is we've still got work to do in that space over the next year or two. Jade's going to talk to you on the 1st of June around what she's doing in that space. Do we start repairing that budget now, this year, or do we wait until that work's done? I just wanted to gauge your views on that. Bearing in mind that there is a cost difference. Of course, you'd appreciate, I think 1% is is about $500,000. So, if we do trim the rate increase, we're potentially decreasing the amount of rates that we'll be generating in future years. But not saying to do that ongoing, it's really, let's make sure that we've got our house in order, and therefore, hand on heart, we can go out to our community and say, we are definitely repairing the budget, and this is our strategy to do that. And we need to adjust our rates accordingly. Sure. Any, Lee?
I was just going to say, so you're basically saying we could either do option 1, which is
it's the 1.5%.
1.5%.
Yeah, yep.
Yep. Or option
3%.
There is a third option, of course, and that's end number above CPI,
Absolutely.
above 3%. And the way that Jade and I have had lots of conversations about this, the way we look at it is as much as is sustainable or attainable by the ratepayers, how much are they willing to stomach, whatever that number might be.
Because I'll just reiterate, this time last year, 1.5% rate increase was going to help start repairing that budget. But there's been some movement, depreciation, economic issues. Who thought last year that we'd be looking at a 5% CPI? We wouldn't. It wouldn't have been. Also, there's some gaps. We've talked about some of the work that Jade and Jess are going to do in that strategy space. We're committed to that. It's in the budget. We're not cutting that even at 1.5%. The issue is that, picking up on Bruce's point, we can go 5%, and we'll get to a slide soon above CPI, and we will be repairing the budget. Absolutely. There's no two ways about it. We can go back and say we are reducing debt, we are reducing deficit, we are heading in the right direction. But that's a big number to stomach. That's a big number to go out to our community with. And what we're saying is it's in incremental steps until, hand on heart, we've got our strategy absolutely bulletproof.
So with consultation, will it be whatever the council agrees to? Will that be put out consultation, or will we be putting out the option you've got 1.5 or 3?
You'll need to go with one, because there's a lot of work, back of house work that Bruce can talk about.
Having a completely different view on that. There are councils who go out with two options.
Yeah.
What they would generally say, and I guess Mitcham's the best example of this, what they went out with was they said, at a rate rise of 5%, these are the projects you get. At a rate rise of 6%, these are the projects you get. All our financials are based on 6%. And so everything that then flowed through the rest of the document was based on a 6% rate rise. We could conceivably do that if that's how the body wanted to go out. But it would be, I guess, we'd be looking to your guidance on what...
If there's an appetite for that. Yeah.
So we've also got lots of people who aren't going to be happy with not doing anything, so what's the...
Are they going to understand depreciation going up there, or is that just going to be white noise?
Most people...
That's where you ascertain priority, though, if understanding depreciation priority.
Do they understand cost?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the challenge, is that fundamentally the change between a 1.5% and a 3% is really about budgetary repair. And setting ourselves up for the future. There's a slide, I think,
Sorry.
it's the next one, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
the usual, we've all seen this graph a number of times. The difference between what this graph will look like and between the two rate rises is that if you have a higher rate rise, understandably your graph will kind of shape it like that, more like that. So your debt will peak earlier and lower and will be repaid faster. The other piece, which it's not necessarily on the slide here, but whatever rate rise we don't choose to make is a rate rise for almost eternity. So if, say, we decided to go 1.5 or go with a 1.5 as opposed to 3%, we lose out on $800,000 this year, but we lose out on $8 million over the life of the plan. When I say lose out, that's not the right words, but financially, council's worse off by $8 million over the life of the plan. Now that will obviously go a long way to repaying our debt. And so that is kind of something we need to toy with and think about as to whether we want to do that. I mean, there's options even where there's a lower rate rise, and again, that spike goes up higher and lasts longer.
And I guess that's where we're saying, don't know what, before I go to Malcolm, next year or the following year will be like. Do you know what I mean? You know, fingers crossed, CPI will drop, you know, and therefore you could make up for lost time in future years and up the rates by 3% or 4% or in future years once we've got our house in order. But yes, whatever you do, you're either pushing those costs and that repayment to future communities, or you're addressing it now or nearer to us. But these are some of the options before council for their consideration. And as you'd appreciate, you know, us as executive have been grappling with this because it is an exceptional year because of what we know around, you know, proper planning and also the cost of living pressures as well. Malcolm.
Some years ago we had a rate rise. We split it into two, CPI, and then we added another 1% for backlog and maintenance or something like that. Then one year I think we added CPI and 2% for fire damage. Is it feasible to put in CPI and then another line saying I don't know, budget repair
Strategy. Absolutely.
It might be a bit easy to sell that because the question is, well, why are you repairing the budget? You should have fixed it up 2 years ago. But it does takes a little bit of heat out of a big number having two small numbers.
Sorry, there's a slide coming up further that talks to that. I don't agree if you want to go forward and then we can come backwards about it.
We'll just take these.
Hang on, I've still got a couple more. We haven't talked about here at all about fixed charge versus the rates. I'm assuming that you're assuming that the fixed charge is going to go up proportionally. We haven't looked at lifting that fixed charge a bit higher.
We haven't.
Should you?
We could, yeah, but we haven't. Right?
I think it's a bit late for that. Like when we've had those discussions about differential rates.
Yeah, it should have happened a month ago, not.
You need to model. I assume that would take quite a lot of work. It's something we can look at next time.
Yeah, it should have been done, and it's also the caught up that rate levies is commercial and all those sort of things, industrial.
And usually, look, we did speak about this today with Bruce, exactly the same thing. And usually the cycle is with new councils, you know, what they do is look at the differential rate, look at caps, look at all sorts of things. And, you know, Airbnb always comes up, you know, accommodation. But do we do that? You know, some councils do it each year, other councils do it with every term. You know, they review, you know, the differential rate and how that's applied. You know, we are at the end of this term, you know, do we do that work now? Or leave it for the new council to do.
But we could have perhaps started back in March with it.
Kira Lee and then Adrian.
Yeah, very brief. Just looking at that, and I think it's aligned with what you've said, but at kind of a different angle. With the 3.5% rate rise we did, then that amount is actually there built in from there on for all future years, and it carries on. So it's not just like, okay, well, let's keep it low because we need to this year, but we're cutting ourselves out of the picture for, for years to come.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there was another piece on that is also, if our rate rises lower, we effectively over the journey borrow more. That in turn has associated interest costs as well.
So they're a double whammy.
Yeah, it is.
But if it means we get more money from here on, that's a good thing.
Well, Adrian.
I'm feeling tickled by the proposition of a multi-budget consultation. Can someone make me an argument to why we wouldn't do that? Because I'm liking it, but there's clearly not everyone does it. I want to understand the why.
So the only reason I would potentially hesitate, the only difference between 1.5% and 3%, you're not getting any more projects. We're not throwing in, if you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get all these extra things. The only thing we're throwing in is you do budgetary repair.
But if we threw in a small, medium, and a large fries, would that change the equation for you going? So I feel like there is a level of the council going, hey, it's not that we said no to the projects and we said get stuff, we're only doing budget repair. I think it does to we really have thought of this. But what are the risks that come with that?
You don't want to be greenwashing.
No, but I think it's legitimate.
Pull it out.
Yep.
I mean, if you're putting the difference forward, you're not saying you get these projects or not. You're saying you get this deficit on. Does the community care about that? That's ultimately the sort of question you're asking if you're putting different.
Is it deficit and debt?
It's a deficit question.
Correct. It's a deficit and debt.
And then if everyone comes back and says we want a 1.5% rate rise, then that tells you the community does not care about the deficit.
Yeah, I think I just feel, because to me the tickle bit is feeling like it's a tester that we get in spurts of feedback, but almost a more consolidated opportunity to get that feedback roundabout way.
It's also, I guess it's also worth thinking about though, if they do come back with an answer like that, are you brave enough to then go public, like from a financially responsible perspective, we don't think that's the right thing to do.
You might get a lot of feedback.
You might.
And that also in turn potentially puts pressure on the timeline towards the end of the process.
Yeah.
We're currently scheduled to go to the 14th, may drift to the 28th, but we have a statutory deadline of the 15th of August by which we have to absolutely, otherwise we could get into all sorts of trouble.
We had Chris, Lucy and Alex.
Yeah, just the thoughts on having scenarios for consultation. There is merit on that, but the downside, but it's not a plebiscite. You don't get a lot of feedback. We're delegated to make the shit decisions. Unfortunately, that's what we've got. We'll have to decide. I mean, I think, yeah, for transparency in that, it is good to have those options, but the amount of feedback you get, there might be a few hundred people,
That's
tops,
true,
might be a dozen. It doesn't give you enough to make a decision, or would you make a decision based on what 50 people think? So I think you've got to be careful what you're setting yourself up for, because there's an expectation as soon as people give feedback, and by 99% of people didn't want to change the wards structure and council changed it. How did that look? So you've got to be careful with that. Anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Thank you. Lucy?
I was just going to say, potentially from the opposite side of that fence, if we're going out to feedback anyway and you get all the people who respond saying that they disagree with what we're doing, does that mean that we change it based on what they've said?
Well,
like,
that's
what's the point of going out for consultation if we're not going to
listen to it?
Listen to what people
We
say?
have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
I
also,
agree.
that's not the point of consultation.
It isn't. No.
It's a fair point. Alex?
I was just going to make the point that I would be fully on board if this difference between 1.5% and 4.5%, because we were going to the community and saying, if we go 4.5%, Woodside gets 1.5 million for its new footy club.
but they're not.
Like I mean, like, for me, that is why I would be giving them options, but just, which is because it's simple for people to understand, was if you start talking about, we're trying to manage a deficit, most people are just going to glaze over on that.
They say, why is that my problem?
Yeah.
Why am I paying?
What Woodside? Yeah, they'd say no, I don't think.
Well, we had the deficit.
Okay, thanks.
Anyway, it'll say-
Thanks, guys. Jade?
Yes.
This is never easy, and I can grapple as much as you all in the room, but I just want to put some of my thinking out there. If we look at the position now and the year we're about to budget for, without what we're going to do in the next 4 years, even though some won't be here, I think we can shoot ourselves in the foot. One thing I want to be really careful about is we're about to engage with our community in ways we haven't before, with the community land management plan reviews, which you'll get across in detail on the 1st of June, and the asset management plans. From my experience, if we embark on an activation, which is the new term, and rationalisation of assets, and add new ways we manage community land, if you bring that change to the community and you haven't got the means to say why you're doing it, and I mean very physical means of why you want to rationalise those assets and why you want to activate those sites differently, because we're moving towards this goal, if you haven't got the capacity to bring that goal, so lots of councils can set a vision but be nowhere near financially able to bring that to life, and the lag time between your heavy engagement to try and get people's confidence to go, and I'm going to name it as an example, yes, give that hall, sell that hall, rationalise that oval, because we agree with the vision. If you can't bring that vision to life within a reasonable time of having done that heavy piece of leap of faith work from the community, you will lose them for a very, very long time. You need to be able to offer that engagement piece around rationalisation at the same time as being very close to being able to bring something together and demonstrate what the value of that body of work was. So I just want to add that lens. I've been involved in many councils where we've gone and we've rationalised and we've changed the way we do things, and we've had big leaps of faith undertaken by the community and then not brought anything valuable to life within a quick enough time frame to keep their trust. So I just want to make sure that that's in the back of your minds as you think about this piece, because it's easy to be conservative at this particular position in our financial journey, but the braver thing possibly to do is to spin yourselves forward, spin the community forward, when we're literally doing the, I'm going to say, I'm not going to name the hall, but I have had another hall with the ceiling collapsing today.
Must be rain.
It's the one that's for sale now.
Oh,
Community or council?
So did I get my tired self across?
So you're going for 3%?
Well,
We go for 10.
yeah, well,
I'm going to Burnside. Burnside did that.
yeah,
If you have a look at
How much do they?
their first year when they realised things was 14%, and then I think the following year was 11, and then they're at 9, and now they're at 7.
Above CPI.
Murray Bridge is 3.9 above the
But
forecast.
that's
And
comparing
who's
is
income?
not. You've got to think of who.
can't compare.
Yeah,
You get-
who we
where
are,
we are.
where we are,
Yep.
and what we're trying to
achieve.
achieve. But remember, we're about to engage really firmly and strongly with our community. We're I'm sure I'll end up literally at every committee meeting and community group meeting in the next 2 years, along with the team. We're going to be really building up the number of people who are going to want to comment on our annual business plan and budget, undoubtedly. So,
Any questions? We'll move on. I don't think we've got many slides yet.
I think we've spoken broadly about that when we're talking about the impacts on the graphs. Take one more point, please, Greg. So we talked about positioning the rate rise. Jade has kind of alluded to as high as able. Well,
Gonna be the poster girl of
no,
paying.
I would stand next to Jade and probably advocate for it as well. But again, this is just from a.
It'll be just you too.
Well, as
Throw us under the bus.
the manager of financial services and looking to guide to a financially sustainable position, not take into account anything else, that's what I would be suggesting. Then there's 3% above CPI, and then there's the 1.5%. And I guess part of the reason we want to talk to you about this today is around how we message it in the actual annual business plan. When we wake up tomorrow morning and start writing portions of the annual business plan, we will be using a very different narrative depending upon which option we look to go with. As I say, the 3%, you know, the highlight is, well, we're commencing budgetary repair, we're going to build a more financially sustainable council. If we're looking at a 1.5%, the messaging is really around we're in a consolidation phase, we're in a planning phase, so that we can then deliver a more financially sustainable council from, I dare say, not next year, but probably the year after. And so the message and the way we write the ABP will be quite different as a result.
And both options are doing some work, but at different rates, as you'd appreciate.
If we were to go with the highest able, we might be able to keep some of our balls.
Yeah, well,
I don't think that's what
I don't know.
I realise that.
Consolidate.
Yeah.
The hardest part is to go, the difference is $800,000, and yet 1.5 or 3% on top of CPI, but you're going to be 7.5% or 6%.
Yes.
It's going to look a lot different to people on that more than what the $800,000 is going to actually be.
Well, that's what. Yeah, this is the thing that absolutely.
It's the visual of it that's going to hurt.
Yeah, and it's the deficit position, and it's how much attention our community will focus on our deficit. We know we've got it, and we're putting in a plan to address that, but it's not this year, and it's not going to be next year. It's a long-term proposition. Adrian.
Have we ever published a rates calculator as part of our business plan, whether through the website where you can punch
It's a good
in
idea. A lot
and
of councils
basically to get, because I know Councillor Ross asked about, you know, different things. Is there a place, is there other consideration that we could have if people are wanting to test what all of this means? If we do go down multi as well, to go, this is what this means for me. That's not a tool that we can mass together.
That had like the real properties as much as how much it increased.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah, so
councils.
based on your last valuation areas, because they're not getting revalued, here's what your current rate is. With the proposed increase, this is what it looks like.
Didn't we have that? I don't know about that.
No, for like the end user, for like a resident.
It's a live.
Yeah, to like jump online, put in that amount, spits out a number.
We don't have that, and our ERP will not support something like that. The other factor to remember is that your rate's a function of obviously your valuation and also your rate in the dollar. As we currently stand, and based on the modelling we've done, the rate in the dollar is actually going down. But because there's been so much value growth in the property that it's more than offset the rate in the dollar. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You're
but
looking
that
slightly
the
confused.
system will need to do isn't just a mathematical equation.
It is, but then we need to get.
We can look. We'll take it on board. Yeah, we'll have it.
I guess the point being that right now our ERP is not capable of doing that, and would be on an individual by individual basis.
I just made a comment, obviously with the rate of the dollar going down, valuation staying the same, putting the percentage up, if you point out those other couple of things when we go out, without, I suppose, consultation, we're kind of pointing out that percentages going up, but these other things are staying. You know, everyone knows the values of their properties have gone up, so if we're not increasing the values, it's kind of a win for our ratepayers.
Well, it's outside of our jurisdiction. That's the value of general.
It's worth pointing out, like, if we were to say, oh, we're being really generous, but we're doing less percentage in a year where the values of the properties all gone up, you kind of gaslighting people a bit.
People might look at average increase.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but also if people look at, well, what do I pay?
Adelaide City Council tried to do that. So they said, oh, we're not putting up our rates, but they weren't putting up the rate in the dollar. Their actual percent rate, and they got a lot of kickback.
Too sneaky.
It is. Chris?
Yeah, a couple of points. Yeah, the whole rate in the dollar thing is interesting because when property prices on this side of the tracks went up, my rates went down. I mean, I'm not gloating because it just means my property price didn't go up as much. But it's interesting, and it's, people find that hard to comprehend. But what I did want to say is, yeah, we don't compare with other councils other than at looking how damaging the headline's going to be. That's when we do.
The newspaper compares them.
Yeah, that's right. They compare them. So we do reference that out of whatever cowardice or political expediency, but we just say, are we kind of in the middle? So that's a useful guide, but I'll have to say, because I've said it at every other budget discussion, I hate deficits because we're borrowing to pay our operating expenses. So, you know, yeah, we've got to be bold. You don't want deficits, you're borrowing to pay operating costs, and no one should be doing that. We're going to have to do it by the look of it, as long as there's a trajectory out of this, Bruce. So we're going to do what you ask. But yeah, but it's yeah, and I've got good friends that just say don't increase the rates, Chris, and well, we're going to increase the rates, and that's what do you say? We just got to be honest.
Lee?
I guess I'm, and maybe it's because I've been sort of conditioned my mind to it, tending towards the 3% above CPI. But I think the really key thing, and I think I said this last time, is we really need an LTFP soon that shows exactly how we're going to prepare, basically. Because even 3%, as Chris said, deficit's still $3.5 million, which is a lot. And it's going to be easier to sell 3% if we have a strong position to show we're going to prepare the budget. And that's what the LTFP does.
So
we need to have that following as fast as possible afterwards. I know for whatever reason we can't do both at the same time, but yeah, we need to have that following, and it says by year 4 or 5, whatever, we're going to be back in the black.
And those planning documents which will be prepared out of this will inform that LTFP as well. So that gives us a more robust LTFP. Yeah. So, to, I guess, the general sense, the general comments around this, when we look at the rate rise, we say, how do we articulate the rate rise to our community? Well, the way I look at it is, you start with your CPI and you say, well, why do we have to charge CPI? Well, there's a general increase in costs across everything that we do. Then if we say, well, as we go above CPI, why do we have to then go above CPI? Well, the initial 0.5% above CPI allows for staff cost increases. So in our EBA, we are, as Greg spoke to earlier, we're slightly ahead of CPI in terms of the rates that our staff get. Certain of our costs go up by more than CPI. Insurance is going through the roof at the moment. We're trying to put a lid on it, but it is what it is. Some of our insurance categories have gone up by 10%. No matter how hard we buckle that lid on, it still is increasing. So we need that initial 0.5% to cover those costs. If we then want to go do some operating projects, which we want to do, as opposed to just doing business as usual. Those come with a cost. And this year we're looking at $420,000 of projects. Those are going to cost us 0.75% of CPI. We also want to do some capital projects. So that list, which is $2.2 or $2.3 million, that will attract a finance cost because we're not going to raise enough rates to cover those. That finance cost is 0.25% of CPI. So when you add those three up, we're at 1.5% of CPI. So that, whether that helps to talk to our communities about why we have to go above CPI, there's part of the reason for it. The bits above there, well, I haven't set a percentage in there, but the conversation becomes around, well, we're allowing for increased depreciation charges, increased financing charges, and we're commencing improvements in our financial sustainability. And so that would be how, if I were tasked with trying to talk to my community about it, that's how I would certainly start. I guess it's a bit more flavour. It makes it, I guess, for me, a bit more like tangible and meaningful for people, rather than I'm just getting stabbed with 1.5%.
It'd work better as a graph.
You could do that as well.
Well, I mean, the same information, but graphically presented.
Well, we did that.
Yeah, well, that's actually what we started. That's actually what we started with, was like a flow chart. But don't help with that. Time constraints.
This is a good point. It makes it hard to. There's some good points in there. It makes it hard to argue with it. Someone's going to get angry about that. Welcome to the real world.
That's it. Just pretty much was nothing else we want to talk about.
I've just got one comment, you may not like to hear it or not, is that I suspect from the northern end of the council, Valley's ward, there will be criticism, and I can't remember what was on the board, if the money all goes over here in Rangers ward and not in Valley's ward. There will be criticism. I know you'll tell me, oh, we've got to sit back and take a global view of it all. I understand that. But it's still hard to convince ratepayers that humbug scrub are getting screwed. All right, so might have to have some words and help out the communication plan.
What makes you say that that's what the budget
No, they
shows?
will.
But what makes you say that's what the budget shows? Because I don't agree with that.
Oh, what's in there for Valley's board?
Well, we haven't seen the individual projects around roads and cars and that sort of stuff.
On the new list, there's none, Nathan.
On the current asset.
Oh, it's the Wood, only do it at Woodside. If you go further north, I can't recall clearly, it might be there. I'm not sure there's too much in there. It's Loberthal, Burdett, Gunnaracka, Clinton Valley, that northern section.
They've got fabric, they should be alright for a couple of years.
Malcolm, in my time on council, that part has done pretty well.
I know, but
despite the rhetoric,
yeah,
it has done.
They don't see it that way, Lisa.
I know that.
Well, that's your job to convince me to now.
You have had 8 of the last 12 playgrounds in that northern.
Yes, they're all on, most of them are on community land.
Yeah. Lucky you're here now.
Okay.
I'm with you, Malcolm.
It's a fact of life, whether it's true or not. Nathan, you've said, yeah, we've done a road playground. Why? Because the community owners up there couldn't afford it, and they are, certainly the locals love it. But I don't think there was anything that I could clearly see up there that benefited the northern section. Anyway, leave it at that. That's a communication strategy that someone will work out for.
And we will be, we'll be putting some strong messaging in the report that will be coming to the 9th of June ordinary meeting of council.
All right, next topic.
Okay, no debating, it's a workshop. The debate can happen on the 9th.
I'm going in 3 minutes.
I stand with Malcolm.
I'm going in 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
5 minutes.
I think the final slide's just the timelines from here.
Yeah, these are the timelines.
I mean, nothing's necessarily changed.
Yeah, I've made the point to Greg about, we used to adopt our budgets on the 1st of July or 25th of June or something like that. And I think I might have done a quick calculation for $55 million worth of rates or all of that coming in. You know, it's 100,000 for a fortnight, something like that. It's a large amount of money that we adopt it, even if it's a special meeting, earlier than the 14th. Yeah, 2 weeks earlier, something like that. Because all the hoo-ha's been done now, or will be done, and usually budget nights, in effect, rubber stamp night, I might say that, we'll debate it, but we won't change it. So I just wanted, I hope the administration could look at perhaps bringing the date of setting the rate forward, ideally 2 weeks, I could be appeased with 1 week. And I wouldn't mind having a special meeting, get a workshop or something like that.
Well, could it be done as a special meeting,
Well, you
Bruce?
could have it with a workshop.
I guess we could take it on notice and look at the timelines. And the reason I say that is that people doing the work, some of them are in the room, but most of them aren't.
Sure.
And so I'd be wanting to consult with my team and with Beck and the planning team. And the final piece I would say is around the community consultation and what we get out of that. That's also something else we need to consider is what impact that will have on Jen Blake, so earlier, and her team, and whether we can actually present a meaningful report. I suspect that because we are going to community consultation there, we have to be out for 21 days. That means community consultation actually only closes in the first week.
Malcolm's looking at bringing it
forward. You can't make around the community consultation. What I'm saying, 23rd of June, we have the public forum, which 2 people will turn up there. So it gives you from the 23rd of June.
Well, the community consultation starts on the 15th of June, which is if you run that for 3 weeks, it's broadly speaking.
With the 18th of May, you can't get anything just budgeted. It's 21 days.
Nathan, you got it.
Sorry, I guess if I look at the timeline, the 2 places you might be able to make up time is if you had a special council meeting on Monday the 1st of June, if you think, and I'm not saying it can be ready to be brought to council. And the other is there a reason that if we endorse it on the 9th, consultation can't start on the 10th?
It's linked to the timing of the advertiser and when the notices go out on the community consultation. So that's a Tuesday. Community consultation typically starts on next week Monday. We could potentially save a few days there. But again, I'm talking on behalf of a team who's not present.
But we'll take that back if we can call it.
Strong desire.
Then I use it.
Yeah, so I can stitch them up and tell them you can do it the day after. Absolutely, I don't want to be doing that today. I guess we can look at the first or an earlier meeting for that date there, but again, that's not terribly far from where we are today. We need to land a rate rise, and then we can, in earnest, finalise the AVP.
Just looking at that, we're having our workshop tonight, and I think if I'm reading it right, it's 3% over CPI. So you know that on the 18th of May. Why does it take 13 and 9, 22 days to have it to put out a draft for a consultation?
There are, well, to Nathan's point, we could potentially go in the week in between, but there is no currently planned, no council meeting in between, and so it would have to be a special council.
Workshop. All right.
Could be, yeah, we'll take it back and work out the timelines. If we can call a special meeting, we'll do that to bring it forward. And the intention is the report, I don't feel that council should be debating. I think administration will put a recommendation forward.
Yeah.
I don't think council would like options. I think
don't let them choose.
Stitching us up.
No, it's unless you do. Yeah, I just wanted to gauge.
If we want to do something different, we do something.
You can do something different.
We can manage that.
So if you put it up.
80,000 for the TDU, like,
there's something that is ticking me down options.
Are you sure? Yeah, happy with them all? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, on a budget like this to possibly something like that a crack. I think we're in this phase of new ways to engage with our community, trying to also repair some of the trust that we do listen and bring them into the conversation, but why use the word tickled, because there are some risks that come with it as well.
Well, I guess the immediate risk for me is that we get consultation feedback and we've built an ABP based on one assumption, and the assumption that we then have to do is different, and we have to then redo a large chunk of that ABP as a result of it. And that then puts pressure on the timeline. So that, I guess, is the risk that we face, and we can choose to do that if we
I think
want to.
the only other thing we could do is, if that was something that others like the idea of, is that because we're so pressed for time for this one and we are up against it, is that something that we genuinely look at doing for next time, and don't forget that we said that it's something that we're interested in doing to be better at the consultation process. But if the fear is with this one that any feedback we get could change things too much to then push it out even further, if that's not a risk people want to take, then maybe this one's not the right one. I like it personally, but
Might not be also be a list of projects, we can just talk about the additional revenue opportunities. Like, not you to get this in terms of the shopping list, but this is the things that you unlock. That was a shopping list, but conceptually great, increased footpath maintenance, increase this.
See, I don't see better consultations, just options or a better way to spin it.
It's not about spinning it, it's about putting what. Yeah.
But if 5 people put their voice, we list the 5 people versus the community.
it's 5 people and you don't need to do anything about it.
We're expecting 5 people.
Well, that's up to us to try and encourage our community to engage with it, the administration to do their work to
Sending it out
engage.
and hoping people don't respond to it, and that's just.
Put an option there of at least 8 to 10% they'll engage. They'll be on it then.
I knew you were a closet 10%, huh?
If I think about it then, the reason I was going down that path was I'd like to see greater engagement on our ABPs, and at the moment, other than those are a specific project, they don't, whereas I think if there is a not just an idea of that you can have some greater control on this, but reality, because reality is we may suddenly get some numbers that go, well, shit, we have to support it. We don't know what we're going to get. We're preempting the risk based on assumptions of feedback we're going to get. The point of us doing this is to actually get a snapshot, a capture of the realities, because we're all sitting in this room and we could be completely disconnected from reality. We don't know. It's why you ask these questions.
If we put a scary number over 15%.
Well, that's why I talk about the small, medium, large fries, right? That's there's a reason that those 3 different sizes are.
Hopefully, as an elected member, you're talking to your community, so you're not getting surprises. You kind of, from the phone calls you get randomly during the week, you get a bit of a feel for what people do and what.
Well, but the core of that is don't do the job, do more, don't increase rates. That's the general consensus. The presentation of this ABP and the conversation is like to unpack it more than the simplicity of get rates down, do more stuff.
Okay, it is getting late. Are we okay? Let's, I think, pull up stumps.
What's the last bit?
Last is the.
Was it a little bit just to knock over?
Yeah.
Is that
I can do it quick, but it would be at least 20 minutes. But I am,
Okay.
this is my last day, like, I'm not, there's not another option for me to do it.
If we don't do it
But
now, we're done.
they can do it.
Okay, do it now.
Malcolm, go. You've been through caretaker a million, zillion, trillion.
Yeah.
Yeah, when caretaker.
If he hasn't got it, yeah, he won't get it.
See you now.
See you tomorrow.
Good night, Malcolm.
I'm not
See you,
sure.
Malcolm. Valley's Award forever.
All right, ready, set, go.
Yeah, go.
We have reduced the question.
I need a cup of tea.
Want a break? Short break?
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
No, let's go. No questions.
Oh, are we doing it?
Question
Yeah,
time's
yeah,
over.
yeah.
Yes, please.
Actually, just one.
Can we have the clicker?
Oops, sorry. Okay.
All right, I'll try and do it really quickly.
The last
No,
hurrah.
no. That's right,
Last
Liz.
hurrah.
So, I'm gonna work through the caretaker policy, the election sign policy and the meeting schedule for caretaker period. The last two are really quick. The caretaker policy is a little bit longer, but I'll try and do it quick. So the purpose of this is to give you a sense of what the requirements are, the mandatory requirements in caretaker, but also to just raise there's 3 areas that there's discretion about what you can and can't put into a caretaker policy. And so just to get a bit of a sense of people's preferences, style. I think before I go into it, it's fair to say probably if you ask the lawyers, they'll say just stick with the mandatory provisions because it's less, makes less, I guess it's clearer, and if there's any confusion, you can go and get legal advice during the time. Probably from a practical perspective, and the approach council's taken previously is they go into more detail. This council, not all councils. And it probably just gives some more practical guidance to people in the election period about what they should and shouldn't be doing. So probably some of you that have gone through a caretaker period before might have some views about was it helpful or not, in terms of the extent of how much information you want in the policy. So the last full review was just before the last election. There've been some legislative changes. The main one being that there is now a compulsory, with some exceptions, candidate information session. Skip that slide. So basically, the guiding principles for caretaker is that the incumbent council shouldn't make decisions that will bind an incoming council. Elected members should not receive any advantage or disadvantage over other candidates because they are an elected member at the time. But at the same time, the day-to-day business of council shouldn't be completely prevented from occurring. So council's still going to have to operate during that September, October, nearly 3-month period. So again, this is just, there are changes to the current policy. I won't go. The main things is that there's this public meeting of candidates, and we've kind of, there's a descriptive list of resources and there's a significant decisions, which I'll elaborate on. They're the discretionary bits. So the mandatory requirements in a caretaker policy is that you have to, at a minimum, you prohibit what's called designated decisions, and I'll define them on the next slide. You have to prohibit the use of council resources for the advantage of a particular candidate or group of candidates. And you have to stipulate that council will hold a public meeting unless you decide not to, but you have to give reasons for not doing so, and the mayor has to sign a statement to that effect, that council has made that decision.
So when you say a public meeting and then a candidates forum?
A candidates forum.
Where every candidate gets to speak.
Well, let's talk about how there's no, we'll get to that, but again, there's no requirements really about how you have to run it, And so we can talk through like how you might want to shape it. And then there's discretionary requirements, and then the current policy has some of those discretionary requirements in there, so I'll run through some of them. So there's two parts to designated decisions. There's the mandatory things that have to be in your policy and you have to comply with. Councils can't make decisions relating to the employment of the CEO, with some exceptions. The other side of it is council can't, there's specific contracting decisions that you can't make, but again, there's some exceptions. So the CEO, the employment of the CEO, you can't make decisions about the employment, remuneration or termination of the CEO, but you can make decisions about appointing an acting CEO, and you can suspend a chief executive officer for serious or willful misconduct. And in relation to the CEO, there's no discretionary provisions that we're suggesting that you would put in. In terms of contracting decisions, generally you can't enter into a decision to enter into a contract, an arrangement or an understanding, the total value of which, the one that applies to this council, is 1% of council's revenue from rates. So if you take, it's from the previous year, so it will be from this year now, but if you took from the previous year, that's over $500,000. So it's not every single contract that you're going to do. And then there's also exceptions anyway. So even if it is over 500,000, you can make decisions around road construction, road maintenance and drainage work. So Jade's okay here. She can keep doing her business. You can carry out emergency or disaster work. You can carry out work that's related to Commonwealth or state funding agreements. So, for example, some of the Amy Giller stuff wouldn't be affected if it was part of a funding agreement. You can make decisions around the employment of staff other than the CEO. You can make decisions around enterprise bargaining negotiations if those negotiations have started before you go into caretaker period. You can make decisions relating to pre-existing SWIMS schemes. So there's a whole lot of stuff that aren't excluded in the designated decisions. Probably the other thing to highlight is it's when you make the decision, it's not when you do the doing. So you can, if you know something's coming up, you should get it through council before caretaker period. And the other thing to point out is, though, it is decisions of council. Council means council is the elected body, but it also means the CEO, the directors, anybody delegated to make a decision on behalf of council. So it actually includes staff as well. These are the discretionary parts that you don't have to add in anything more than that in your policy. You could just leave it at you're prohibiting the designated decisions, as we've run through how they're defined. At the moment, the current policy also has significant decisions that are also recommended not to be made, but it's lighter touch. And the wording is around the CEO should not schedule significant policy decisions. And then it has provisions around, and if the CEO does do so, there needs to be a record of having done so, and council needs to be advised why it's appropriate for them to make decisions. So it's, again, it's not as strong as you just can't make a designated decision. That list there is the types of things that are listed as examples of what would be thought of as significant decisions. So it provides a guide to the CEO and staff around what they wouldn't be bringing to council or making decisions on during the caretaker period, unless there was good reasons to do so. And so it's things like spending unbudgeted money, unplanned consultation, new policies, action plans, dispose of council land, approve community grants, progress matters that are election issues, and other matters determined by the CEO. So I guess it would be good at some stage, whether tonight or in the next week or so before the report comes to council to get a sense of what's people's preference. Do they want the discretionary, this extra bit in the policy, or you can leave it as just the designated decisions? The other thing, probably before I move off designated decisions, for people to understand is a decision that is a designated decision, if council makes one, it's an invalid decision and council is liable to somebody who has relied on that decision. So it's quite a serious, the designated decision is mandatory, it has to be in the policy. This is more discretionary and more, I think, around a principle about the kind of convention of caretaker. But also does provide a bit of a guidance to the CEO on what you're asking the CEO and staff to think about during caretaker period. Should I pause for discussion or should I keep going?
If this Jade's topic earlier, that we end up in caretaker mode just with the way things are turning, we had to potentially purchase a proper property hypothetically. Would that be sorry, we're going to put it on pause or?
No, it's a great question. It's why we workshopped it tonight. We've got such a long night. It's to get that variation in council resolution embedded so that we feel we're already looking at the suite of resolutions to see that we're set up for caretaker, so that we're doing it in multiple areas. But it's an excellent question, and there is a chance we won't think of everything in time. And then I'll let Zoe answer the rest of the question. But there are ways and means you can.
Yeah. So I think there's a whole lot of work. That's why we're having all these extra workshops, because we're trying to get in as much as we possibly can before caretaker. I still think ultimately it will come at the time of a decision, and whether we're going to, like it might be prudent for Jada at a particular time to go, okay, this is quite a serious decision. I'm going to get some advice on whether it is a designated decision, because it, like, you can't foresee all the steps they're going to happen, because the resolution as worded doesn't actually necessarily give approval to buy the land, and so that might be the next. It just depends where you are.
Get some advice.
Yeah, and so when it gets to that kind of those really pointy ends, you would actually go and get advice on a particular matter with the facts. Just because of the invalidity of the decision. Yeah. Like, it's quite serious.
Caroline?
Yeah, I just wanted to know the dates exactly of caretaker.
I'm getting to that because, again, that's one of your discretionaries.
Right.
But if you don't decide otherwise, it's the 8th of September.
Just the conversation we had on budget, just next month.
Yes, I think I have it at higher level.
Okay.
The next mandatory section is the prohibition on the use of council resources. So again, the bit that has to be in the policy is that council resources must be not be used for the advantage of particular candidates, a group of candidates. The Act then goes into council can provide resources equally to all candidates, or to the public, which incidentally includes candidates, so like library services. But on a practical level for council members, that means you can't use your phone, your computer, any of your resources that we give you, you can't use that for your election period. You need to use your own personal resources.
Personal email?
Personal email for that whole period. So what the policy I think does now, but we may have put more in, and the LGA guides provides a list and some examples of what counts as council resources. Again, kind of I guess my leaning is towards giving some examples and being more concrete for people, but it's not mandatory. You don't have to have that part in there. This is based on the LGA guide as examples, and again, they're really clear in their sample policy that you can put it in, but you don't have to. So again, some of their examples is you don't use your mobile phones, you can't use council resources. That won't apply to council vehicles. That's just for you. You're the only one that has a car anyway.
I was incredibly mindful.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I was
yeah.
thinking really-
And it doesn't apply technically to the supplementary elections. This is, it
Oh, it's
accounts
still
to
weird.
general elections.
No way I would.
But I think it's better practice. not
And I
to
think
use
having
it.
a list is good.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify, that's for electioneering. It
Yes,
doesn't mean that we
yes.
can't log on to our council email and see the agenda.
100%. No, no, you can just.
So it's for
Yes,
electioneering.
yes, yeah, it's
not
for
just
campaigning.
stuff.
Yeah.
Means you can't stop taking phone
Yeah,
calls.
no, yeah, and you can still come to council meetings, but you might, like some councils take back councillors' fobs, so you can only come into the public meeting spaces and you can't go into the offices anymore. Like that's what some councils do, because it's just to do your business as a council
And
member.
you can still go to an event where you're invited as a councillor, you just don't go there and then campaign.
And then you can't start
Vote
campaigning.
when you're there in your official
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Two
and
distinctly
you
different
can
things.
visit people as
Yeah.
on the business card because they want to talk about drainage on their block or something like that.
Yes.
So you can't campaign.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like another example is, you know, like on the annual business plan, normally the mayor might have a statement about how great council is. They might not do that during the election period. You might not get the media. Some councils stop releasing them, like the media monitoring during the campaign period.
Alex, you had a question?
Yeah, just last question. I've got my own personal phone, but obviously people, you spend your time saying, council, contact me through my council emails as a track. So during caretaker mode, if people want to talk to me about what my thoughts are moving forward, I have to go, actually don't contact me in my council. Yeah,
Well,
okay.
it depends. Yeah, it depends on the nature of the inquiry.
Yeah. But if it is
But
about
within
thoughts
reason.
moving forward,
Yeah.
Reply
in the
forward that
context of
to you,
campaigning.
own email and then respond.
Adrian.
I have to ask a question on our phones. So if you have a phone number that you use for council-related business, it's not provided by the council, nor do you expense.
Doesn't matter.
for-
I think the answer is pretty clear.
No, but it's more as no, because in a campaign, right, you start making some phone calls, for example. Can you? It just was, yeah. That's the only one that was just standing out to me. Fine. Well, like it's my council number, and I do all the council business on it, but it's not provided by council.
So it's not using council.
Yeah, or just don't claim the photo.
If it's not a council resource,
So you're
it's
running
not a
it.
council resource.
Yeah.
If it's not a council resource, it's not.
If council's paying for it, the council resource.
Okay. Moving right
Okay,
along.
so the next one is, this is a requirement to have a candidate public meeting. It is a requirement. You can decide not to, and some councils have been deciding not to, like we're sharing all the caretaker policies as councils progressively endorse them. I wouldn't recommend deciding not to.
I find it strange that they delegate that decision with certification to someone who might be a candidate.
Yeah. 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 Well, I guess the thing is, you can make this caretaker policy years ago. Like it's just we're happening to do it just before caretaker period.
So I think if we vote to decide not to have one for normal EMs, but we'll have one for the mayor or Rob, so they have to have a public meeting.
I think more transparency and opportunity for residents to be candidates.
He's already on his campaign trail.
I mean, I think from a transparency and a governance perspective, it would be hard to justify not having one. Some councils do, because some of the reasons that are given in the LGA's example is, you know, because historically that council area has always had a community group run the forums, and they're already having forums, and there's a different way of getting information, or, you know, it's the cost is prohibitive for a tiny council, or they've got some kind of legitimate reasons. So there are some, you can hold them remotely. There's no requirements about how you would run them, but I would suggest that you like for example, you wouldn't take questions live on the floor, or if you did, there would be somebody who was vetting them first. I think you could easily have candidates present what their position is for the future, and then break up so people can come and talk to them separately without necessarily having to take live questions. You don't have to set how you're going to run it in your policy, except that you're going to have one. The minimum in the Act, you have to have one, more than one, the wording is. No, one. Hang on. There's the wording. At least one. I guess I would I query whether it would be the best kind of transparent, accountable approach would be to have one for each ward and one for the mayor. It's up to you again, that's discretionary. The policy could just use the wording in the Act, at least one. Council will have at least one, and then you just leave it up to administration about how they're going to meet that requirement. Or you can put in the policy some framing around what you would like to look like whether you want one in each ward.
The mayor could attend both, but the mayor wouldn't have to have a separate one, the mayor could just go north and south.
There'll be three, remember there'll be 3 wards for the next election.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the mayor could do it 3 times, or you could have a separate one for the mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one per ward. That way it's localised to people going to see the candidates they can vote for. And I would just tie in the mayoral one at each ward.
Yeah.
And it's up to those candidates to decide whether we go to 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I don't think like running one individually, one part of the council separately, is the best way to give residents the opportunity to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the changing system.
So a minimum of 3, one in each ward. Yeah. The other thing is candidates aren't required to attend, it's just an opportunity for them, you can't compel them to attend. They can be held remotely and candidates can attend remotely, that's in the Act. It's presided over by the CEO or somebody he appoints, and there are already people out advertising about facilitating forums. This is the last discretionary bit, which is about the election period. When you set it, it's up to council. You can set an earlier date than the 8th of September. Given the amount of workload that's coming up and the number of meetings, I would not recommend that for you, but just so you know, you can have that. So I think the aim is to bring this to you on the 9th of June for adoption. That's right.
Yeah.
Right, that's it. Was there anybody want to give any views about the discretionary?
Just the minimum.
Yeah. Any of the other bits?
Not any really. I mean, I guess I'm sort of thinking what we've had before might change. Seems to work okay.
Yeah.
Let's just strip it back so we can get as much done as possible.
Sorry, what do you mean by that, Mayor?
I don't do the things that are discretionary.
Oh,
So the election sign policy, this is a new policy. You have not had an election sign policy before, but there's been a whole bunch of changes, and the laws around this are in multiple different locations in acts. And so this policy is basically, so the LGA released a guidance material, not a model policy, but a guidance, and we decided it would be useful to put it all together in one place because it will help staff in enforcing it, particularly the enforcement team. So it's quite a legal policy because it just basically runs through what the rules are for local government elections, what the rules are for state elections, and what the rules are for Commonwealth elections. The wording is different for each act and section, so we've kept them different, but ultimately the effect is the same, which is basically you can't, as a basic general rule, you can't have election signs in very many places. You can, I'm skipping all of this, and where am I up to? Yeah. The key messages, so basically, you can't have them on like road associated areas. What's the word? I can't remember the wording from the Act, but anyway, like roads and
Road reserve.
it's the extra anyway. I'm not going to get it. Anyway, so you can't have them on trees, poles, traffic signs, street furniture, anywhere along roads. You can have it, must not be displayed on council-owned or council-controlled land or structures without council consent. So effectively, council's never going to give consent to one candidate and nobody else. And you can't have it in any location where the sign creates a safety risk, restricts access or obstructs traffic or pedestrians. You can't have it, the only exceptions are you can have a movable sign on a council road if you're either holding the sign or it's on private land with the landowner's consent. So we had a few people in some of the supplementary elections where the people were complaining about signs that people thought was public land, but it was actually private land. And you can have it for a movable sign for an election-related activity up to 6 hours. And so that includes canvassing. So you can put a sign out going, I'm canvassing around this area, and then you can have your sign out for that period, as long as it's not for over 6 hours. And then not related so much to the signs, but also the enforcement officers also enforce the Local Nuisance and Litter Control Act in relation to pamphlets, and particularly pamphlets on cars. That was an issue in our last supplementary election.
As in putting them like under a windshield.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a no-no.
That's a no-no. Yeah. But under a different legislative instrument and election signs.
Does that apply to parking tickets?
No.
No.
It doesn't.
Because it's the same person
And
enforcing it.
you're allowed to let them off, just not put it on the cars. So this is more just a pulling together of what all the Act is. It's quite a legally policy, but it's, I think, useful to have it all in one place, and I think it will be more effective. That will exist as a policy that I'm hoping you'll just endorse, but I think on the website it will have more this key messages bit that will just explain to candidates, because it's not really clear. Like, it actually takes a long time to actually work out what is and isn't allowed, and they made some changes on 1st of January because it was so unclear for everyone.
Just on that canvassing, I don't quite understand that. So you could put an A-frame out for 6 hours a day every day? What?
If you are canvassing for votes, so if you're door knocking and like going and talking to people,
So
in
you've
that
got,
neighbourhood,
you've got to be active.
You've got to be doing what's the word? Election-related activity as defined in the Act.
Okay.
So one of the examples is like door knocking and canvassing for votes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just put it out.
No, for
And
6
not-
hours and say, I'm canvassing.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's it for the election policy. How am I going? I don't even
Good.
to take a breath.
Good, okay.
They're like 5 minutes.
Hey?
You're flying through.
Flying through. So frequency of council meetings, this again I think 2 slides. Basically, because of those restrictions around what you can make decisions about during caretaker period, particularly if you decide to have the significant decisions included, it's a matter of, I guess, good governance. We're basically proposing then that you might want to consider having less meetings. Under the Act, you're only required to have 1 meeting a month. And so we're suggesting a proposed timeframe where on the left it's the current schedule for council meetings as decided, resolved by council. On the right is we're basically suggesting to skip the first meeting of each month and have the second meeting of the month. The 8th of December meeting, of course, is actually up to council to determine. So the first meeting after council, after the election, will be the 24th of November meeting. So there is because you'll miss the 10th, you won't have the result by the 10th of November. The count is the 11th, you won't have the result for quite a few days. So then on the 24th of November, the new council decides its meeting program going forward. So the 8th of December, we're assuming that they'll decide to have their first meeting on the 8th of December.
But that'll be the last meeting of the year anyway, wouldn't
It would be the last meeting of the year.
And a Christmas party.
But they have to have a meeting in that month.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we've done previous terms.
Yeah.
We have one meeting and then the following meeting is the last one.
Yeah, because they're always in November, so there must be one meeting where that 24th of November meeting will be jam-packed full. You'll endorse a whole lot of policies, delegations that have to get done at your first meeting.
So people who aren't running again, the last meeting will be on the 27th of October?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
It's birthday, it's going to be tough.
Anyway, I don't know whether anybody's got any views about that, but that's coming.
Wonderful
Good. Great.
Love it.
Good. That's what I wanted to hear, Lucy. And on that note,
Done.
that's the end.
Thank you.
Well done, Zoe, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Funny, the others were as efficient as you.
That's because Malcolm went home and couldn't ask questions.
And if anybody finds my other earring that I lost during that presentation,
During the presentation.
you'll get my thanks. Yes, they were falling out and I thought I was putting them back in.
There's something under Malcolm's chair. Is it a crumb?
There might be food.
Yes.
Is it a nugget?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of crumbs around this.
Maybe it did fall out somewhere else.
Is it stuck in your dress?
Too late for the pub. It's too late for the pub.
Trying to carry too far.
That's okay.
Maybe he didn't. We have no. That's interesting. I thought they would say. Yeah.
I just popped that. Oh, when I
Yeah. No, you can do that.
worked at
Yeah.
yeah. working at my phone for 15 years.
Yeah.
And when I left, I was like, that's my number. I brought it with me, so it's coming with me. So I think you can bring your number with you. We've got don't have a leg to stand on it. Who's there?
Yes. Director of there. But
See you tomorrow night, Zoe.
See ya.
Yeah, see you in 24 hours.
Canberra, so they're located in Canberra. So, like my first week of movement. I think what I'll do is try and go
Well, home time. See you tomorrow.
yeah.
It's probably my first one where I skip the pub because it's probably closed.
Yeah,
Yeah, and in fact, I spoke to this.
Oh.
But we're not looking at individual providers at all. Like we look at the system, and so it's kind of like I don't think this is.
Because one thing people always say is how good health and care systems are.
Well, and because I worked on
Yes, yeah, yes.
and so basically my first job is reporting on how it's implemented our recommendations. Yeah, yeah, and like I have, yeah,
Even better.
yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's really exciting. Did you get phone call?
No. Yes.
Did you ask?
Do you need a hand?
It was so relaxing.
You sure?
If you can bring a glass or two.
Alright, I'm then going to drop the slot. Oh no, I'll leave the slot here.
Yeah.
Support, etc. Party pooper. Oh, I can't. I like ice tea, so no.
Standing and talking and
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. Oh, no, I couldn't smell it. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure
You
there's
too.
every chance we'll cross paths again at some point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll shoot you my
Yes.
personal number.
Please do. That would be super fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
See
ya.
you. Look after yourself.
You too.
I always tell things on the ground. I can see from here, but there's a red something on something. That's laptop bag. That's not mine. Cool shoes, babe.